Welcome back to the show. Our first guest is Allen Valentine, president of Elite Casino Marketing Group. Allen, welcome to the show.
Great to see you, Mike.
Great to
As
see
always.
you. Listen,
Thanks for having me on.
We did this. I want to thank you. You were one of our first guests several years ago when we first started this show with Mr. David Pena.
Yes.
It's our friend, our mutual friend.
Yep.
It was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
So, listen, let's get to, I know you a little bit. We're getting familiar with each other, especially off screen here. Tell folks a little bit who you are, what you're doing, and what brought you here from Rhode Island.
I write, produce, and direct production shows here in Atlantic City and other markets. I came here in 1990. God, I was 24 years old. I'm aging myself here. And I was a magician back then and got hired at the Trump Taj Mahal the day it opened and was the resident magician. So what that meant was I would work in the gourmet restaurants doing close-up magic, and then I'd work in the production shows at night doing a 10-minute act. And then when my act was over, I'd run and do some VIP parties, and it was a very exciting time. And then some executives at the Trump organization said, hey, do you want to have your own show at Trump Plaza? And I said, of course. And for 2 years, I was at Trump Plaza with the magic of Allen Valentine. And then that took off. We started touring. We were at the Tropicana of Atlantic City. We were in Biloxi, Myrtle Beach. We were all over with that show. And during that period of my life, I started producing other shows when I wasn't on stage performing. And then that started really taking off. And I just fell in love with the idea of just taking a bunch of creative people, working together, shaking it up, putting it up on stage, and hearing an audience, hopefully, roar with applause and laughter. And so that's kind of who I am and what I do.
So, okay, we'll go back to the musician, though.
Sure.
As a kid, or what was it, for family?
Yeah.
How'd that get started?
So I had a tooth pulled. And on the way back from the dentist, I'm feeling just all Novocaine up. I'm miserable. I think I was like 8, maybe 9 years old. And my mother pulls in front of a toy store. And she said, stay in the car, I'll get a surprise. She comes out with a magic set, one of those little like TV magic sets. That was it. That moment just made my life go this way. And then I started working birthday parties, weddings, sweet 16s in my neighborhood, in my area. And then I grew up on Long Island, so I started working clubs in Manhattan. Right. The Limelight, the Palladium, the Tunnel, these are all clubs back in the late 80s, early 90s. And an opportunity for the Taj Mahal came up, and I left Long Island, came down here for what originally was a 6-month contract. And 33 years later, I'm still here. Still here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to segue a little bit, though.
Sure.
But when you talk about these buildings, these casinos, Taj Mahal, very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
The Plaza, you speak about that. I always say the story with my mom, and we saw your show back in the day at the Plaza. My mom and dad raised 8 kids, right? I never really saw them together. Obviously, they were together. They had 8 kids, but always working, dropping off, wrestling practice, soccer, softball practice for the girls. Last sister gets out of the house, and now we're going to the Plaza occasionally. Hey, come join us for the buffet or a show and whatnot. And it was just those properties and what you were bringing at that time. They loved your show. God bless them. But it was just reinventing mom and pop again. And I don't mean to get into that, but it was just one of those places. Talk about the Taj, how it was, and how the Plaza was for some of it. It just came down 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, when the Taj first opened, it was the place on the planet, right? It was the cover of Time magazine. It was super exciting place to be. I mean, Michael Jackson's walking down the hallway one minute, Mike Tyson's over here, and it was just a very exciting time. And people dressed up, right? People were in suits and ties. The gourmet restaurants, you had to kind of look a certain way to get in, and it was a different era in Atlantic City. It was glamorous. Yeah. And then, then to have my own show at Trump Plaza was just a dream come true.
And you're a young guy seeing all this going on. I mean, that's kind of...
It was wild.
Right.
It was wild. And that's coming from somebody that was working the club scene in Manhattan.
Right.
So that was a very exciting time in my life, without a doubt.
There's no question about it. I mean, it was a special time in Atlantic City. I see a revitalization coming on, but I don't think quite that, when that Plaza was moving and grooving, and like you said, Mike Tyson walking through the building, and Bruce Willis, and I could go on with all these other entertainers, and the fights next door when it was the convention center. Us old heads know it, which is Boardwalk Hall now. So you get your own show. A little different from being a musician. I mean, you're a one-man guy there. Now you transcend to shows, producing.
Yes.
How does that, evolve? And you just mentioned it that you're like, I want to get all these people together, but Not an easy task.
It was not, especially my very first swing at the bat at Trump Plaza was, it was a moment of, did I bite off more than I can chew here by saying yes to this? And I think my team and I rose to the occasion. I think we put on a very special show. And what made that show different was it was a bit of a book show for a magic show. So it was a storyline about a magician who worked for the CIA. He had to rescue the heroine. He had to defeat the villain. It was just, very Indiana Jones, James Bond. I strapped on a jetpack, flew around the stage, vanished in midair, appeared in the back of the audience. It was just, right, you remember the show? Yeah. So it was something very different. And the executives were very happy with that show opening. And then the following year, and then an executive, Dennis Gomes.
Oh, yeah.
Dennis?
Oh,
yeah. I knew Dennis.
Great guy.
Great, wonderful, wonderful man.
So many things he did for so many people.
Oh,
I could just go on. But
his imprint in Atlantic City, I think, will last forever. And he then spotted me at the Plaza and said, hey, you want to come over to Tropicana? I said, sure, and I was there for almost a year. So producing my first big show was very exciting and a big task.
And some of the, again, you're a young guy, you're putting these shows together with your team, it's a tour, so you're seeing some of the folks come out, and as the audience continues to grow and roll in, and you're seeing some stars probably in the audience as well, what is that doing for your confidence? Because, we're here at Stockton University, and this is the way you got started with magic and whatnot, but now you're doing shows, and we'll get into that in the next segment, how many different shows. When you say something, you said team. Talk about that. I mean, you have to have...
I have a wonderful creative team and a wonderful pre-production team. A lot of people to name, but my core group is Linda Vormans, who's creative manager, my production manager. Julian Reed is my choreographer. My wife, Christine, is not only an amazing dancer and performer, but she has become just a brilliant costume designer. I mean, you've seen the shows. I mean, it's just... The one thing people always say when the show's over is, wow, those costumes are gorgeous. And so that's the core team. So we meet and discuss what the next show is going to be, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like. And then I start to introduce the rest of the other team members. Arlen Gilliam is my musical director. Gerard Capral is my musical director. And so we start, building this thing. Go, well, what's the look and feel of it? What's the theme of the show? And just building it. It's fun. And then working with the scenery and the lighting designers, and then putting it together.
But ultimately, you're the decider.
Sure, the buck stops with me for sure.
Right. Yeah. You're standing in the back of the room when it starts, and you're the one. I mean, I'm sure everyone's nervous and whatnot. But it's probably
I'm
a
the
bit
most
different.
nervous. I'm the most nervous. Yeah.
I mean, even for someone at this time in your career, it's still probably the same sort of.
It's exciting.
Right.
I mean,
stomach going.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And there's nothing like the very first day of rehearsal, because no matter how many shows I do, I'm thinking, oh God, what are we doing here? Right? I mean, the very first moment, and then it kicks in. It's like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years. We know what we're doing, and and also give young, talented people a chance. That we hold open call auditions usually in Manhattan. We had one casting call that was like 250 people, singers, dancers that showed up, and we watched them, we listened to them, and one after the other, and to give some of that talent a break, and then to see their career go somewhere. It's been very exciting.
That's got to be awesome. Hey, folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back. We'll continue our discussion with Allen Valentine, president of Elite Casino Marketing Group. Be right back.